It is go time, Podsters. That's right. The holidays are here. Thanksgiving is next week. And then after that comes the rest of the holiday season, commitments, obligations, expectations from others, expectations from ourselves or to ourselves. Did you know, get this, it is okay to completely opt out of family gatherings? Did you know that? You can say no. You can set a time limit on how long you're willing to participate. Here's the thing. You get to decide what's best for you. And in this episode, I've invited back the boundary boss, Barb Nangle, to talk about how, when, who, what, everything around boundaries. In fact, we even have a really fun role play. It was fun for me because I got to challenge Barb as our most difficult relative must do. And not surprisingly, she handles it like a pro. So I'm going to get right into it. I'm going to introduce the episode. And if you find yourself wanting more after listening today, you have 1 week left to register for the Boundary Bootcamp, which Barb and I are hosting together on November 15th. So buckle up, Podsters. This one is one for the books. Are you ready to speak up, stand out, and get your seat at the table? If so, you're in the right place. Welcome to Unmute Yourself, the podcast where you'll get real-life anecdotes and actionable tools for you to step into your strengths, debunk imposter syndrome, truly know your worth, and show up like you own the room every time. I'm your host, Nancy Medoff, who did the thing and followed my passion for empowering women like you to unleash that inner spark and become who you know you are meant to be. I'm a diehard foodie with a raging Skittles habit who will not stop until women everywhere unmute themselves and truly thrive at work, at home, or wherever you may be. Let's do this. Hey, Podsters. I can't wait for you to hear this session. And before I get into it one-on-one with Barb, I realized after we recorded this that I neglected to talk about what I think is probably one of the most important boundaries ever. And those are the boundaries that you set with yourself. This is going to be a really fun session filled with tactical, practical tools for you to set expectations with your family and your friends. And let's remember setting expectations with ourselves. This has really, really come to mind with me lately because, frankly, I've honored my own boundaries with myself, and I've been really proud of myself. I'm going to give you an example. So I had my last public speaking session of the year last week. Shout out to all my new friends. I don't think I can mention their name, but I will give you a hint to all of you that were there. My friends in the Seaport in Boston, you all brought your A game and we crushed it. This was a full day session and everybody they just brought it. So thank you. I miss you all and can't wait to see you. However, what you may not know is leading up to that session, I had to create some significant boundaries with myself. I know what I need to do to thrive. And this was going to be a very long day for me. I needed to bring all of my energy all day. So I knew what I needed to do. I needed to not go out a lot that week. The session was on a Thursday. I needed to not drink any alcohol that week. It doesn't matter to me, really. It can be one glass of wine. It still kind of slows me down and makes me a little sluggish. I made sure I drank my water. I made sure I didn't overextend myself. All of these little boundaries that I set with myself. And I caught myself a couple of times challenging myself. So for example, the night or 2 nights before the session, there wasn't anything to eat in the fridge. And I said, okay, let's go out to dinner. And I thought about, okay, if I go out to dinner, I'm going to get back a little late. I'm not going to be able to stick to my bedtime routine. I'm not going to get the sleep that I want to get. I'm not going to be really as charged and recharged as I can possibly be. So I called Danny and I said, hey, let's go out to dinner. And then I called him back about a half hour late and I said, I forgot. I set a boundary with myself that I was going to stay in every night this week and really just hunker down, get to bed early, honor my bedtime routine. And that one little act that I took of honoring my own boundary, I really felt proud of myself. And I really, from that moment, continued to honor the rest of my boundaries that week. So that's my wish for you, is that you think about as we go into the holiday season, and the next 6 weeks are going to be packed with how to thrive during this busy time, and how to turn that holiday fear into holiday cheer. And one of the first things you can do to make sure that that's how you're living through your holidays is to honor your own boundaries. So with that, my Podsters, I bring you the Boundary Boss. And we're back. Hey, Podsters, I am back. I am just going to jump right in because I could not be more excited to welcome back Barb Nangle, who, if you are watching this on YouTube, you can see how awesome and fun she looks. We're recording this on Halloween, and Barb is dressed up as are you a hippie or what?
Hippie chick.
Hippie chick. So she's got the heart-shaped sunglasses. I think she has a bead on her head. Some funky.
And I got the string around. These are literally 1970s earrings, literally.
Love it. And this is on Zoom, and I was not prepared for this. I am wearing nothing except my unmute yourself hat. But that's cool.
You're wearing clothes. You are
wearing clothes, yes.
You're not wearing nothing.
Right.
With your...
Yeah, I have an orange vest on, but it's got pink in it. So we're going to get right into it. As you know, Podsters, boundaries changed my life, and they have changed many people's lives. And I have received tons and tons of feedback about when I send an email or when there is a discussion, a podcast episode, anything about boundaries. So Barb has made it her career to help people with boundaries. We're going to get right into it. She and I are doing a boundary boot camp next week. It's November 15th. There's 2 sessions. I'll put the link in the show notes. And leading up to the boot camp, we figured, well, why not just come on and talk about it? So Barb, tell me why you think it's so hard for people to set boundaries around the holidays.
It's hard for people to set boundaries, period, because they think that they're a bad person for saying no, because they get feelings of guilt and shame and they're paralyzed by them and they can't get past them, because there's expectations from their family. When it comes to holidays, the expectations can be generations long, the tradition in the family, and it's hard to break patterns. But when they're generations long or decades long, or people place a lot of meaning on them, it makes it extremely difficult. So there's all the regular boundaries reasons, but then they're magnified when it comes to the holidays.
You know, you said something to me when we were talking about prepping for the Boundary Bootcamp, and it really resonated. And it was maybe the boundary is you simply don't go or attend or whatever the case may be. So have you had a situation where either you or someone that you're coaching, this is the boundary that they simply do not attend?
Yeah. So when I first got into 12-step recovery, which is where I learned how to set boundaries, I thought that, like, when I went to my brother's house and he talks politics all the time and he's really loud, I thought that I could just say to him, hey, that really hurts my ears, or I don't want to talk about politics. And I thought that was me setting a boundary. So that is me trying to control another person, which is impossible. And so I realized, like, he's literally incapable of talking quietly, and he's literally incapable of not talking about politics. So my boundary was that I spent less and less time with him. And then when it came to Christmas, I love Christmas. I love decorating for Christmas. And my first Christmas in recovery, I brought presents for my brother and his, like, then late teen children. And they had presents for each other, and nobody had presents for me. And we had always exchanged presents in my family. So it was so awkward and weird. And they didn't decorate at all. And so I was like, the next Christmas, I'm hosting Christmas. You're welcome to come. And so I'm not going there. And then I also was like, I'm not going to Thanksgiving anymore. I can't deal with it. I also happen to be in recovery for compulsive overeating. And so, you know, I don't go for the meal anymore. I go for the company. And when the company is difficult and triggering for me, there's no reason for me to go. So yeah, that's been my own experience for sure. And then, of course, you know, I have lots of clients that opt not to. Nobody has told me that they've opted not to go, but they go for limited periods of time. They drive on their own. They say, I can come from 2 to 4, and then they stick to it. And what usually helps people is to plan something else for the 4 o'clock, so that you literally have another thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have the wherewithal to leave at 4 without having something else to do, go ahead and do that.
I love it. So
yeah, if you know that I can only tolerate so much time with these people, then only tolerate that much time with them.
I love so much of what you just said. So and then I'm going to go chronologically. Boundaries are not trying to control the other person because you're not going to change the other person. And that is incredibly powerful. And that's been incredibly powerful for me to learn is instead of why can't they be like this? Or why do they keep acting like that? They're not going to change. So the only thing you can change is how you interact with them. And you get to do that. That's on you.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think if you find yourself complaining about a person or a situation over and over and over again, it's on you now. Because they, in that situation or that person is the way that they are and you cannot change them. You can influence other people by the way that you interact with them, but you can't change them. And if you go into the boundary setting with the idea that I'm going to get people to do things that I want, then that's not how it works. Boundaries are about you and they're for you and they're about you changing your behavior. And what's really super powerful about that, Nancy, is you can actually control you. But because you've been so focused out there on them and what they're doing or not doing, you've got nothing left for yourself. And even if you did, you're so focused out there, you don't realize, wait, I can actually do something here. You know, it's powerful mindset shift.
I love it. I absolutely love it. It's about boundaries are about you and not them. And about
right. And they're for me. They're not against you.
Right. For me, not against you. Love it. And by the way, I would even, if pushed, I'm not sure I'd use those exact words, but I might. Like, you know what? This is about what's best for me, not against you. This is about.
I don't do that. I don't say that to people,
right.
But it's the way that I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and it's not that I would never say it. There might be a circumstance in which I would say it for sure, but it's a mentality. This is for me, not against them, because so many people are afraid to set boundaries because they don't want to offend other people. They don't want to hurt other people's feelings. They don't want the backlash from people. And other people get to respond however the fuck they want, right? And so you just get to decide, how am I going to respond to their response?
Right. Right.
You're not hurting someone by setting a boundary. Like, I love this distinction. There's a difference between harming someone and hurting someone. So it doesn't harm someone to set a boundary with them. It might hurt their feelings, but it doesn't harm them. So here's a really good metaphor that I love to use. It might hurt you to use a needle to take a splinter out of your finger, but it's not going to harm you. In fact, it's going to heal you. So it might hurt someone's feelings to set a boundary with them, but it's not going to harm them. In fact, it may heal the relationship because you're being honest with them about what's okay and what's not okay. At minimum, it's going to heal your relationship with yourself because you're showing up for yourself and following through on what's important to you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love that. It's about, in my words, it's about moving the relationship forward in a way that's healthy and positive for both people in the relationship. So I want to get back to Thanksgiving because that's what's hot on everybody's mind, or Christmas. And again, these apply to anything. So you can drive on your own. You can limit the time. And you don't have to say, I can come between 2 and 4. Like, of course you can say that. You could say, it's a super busy day for me. I definitely want to be able to come spend time with you and your family, or you and the family. I'll be there at around 1 and I have to go to another event later in the afternoon or whatever. So if you don't feel comfortable saying, I'll be there between 2 and 4 and set your watch to it, you've still established, I'm not going to be there all day. I'm not going to be there for this or this. And it's putting a limit on it. I love that because it's not black and white. It's not, oh, everybody there is triggering for me, so I'm not going to go. And it's not, I'm going to go and I'm going to be miserable and it's going to be horrible and I'm going to be triggered and traumatized for the next 6 months. It's, I can probably take that person for about an hour. So guess what? I'm going to go for an hour.
Yes.
I get to decide.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
I figured out that I have a 59-minute window limit with my mother. 59 minutes. That's it.
What happens at 60?
I gotta go.
Yeah. Yep. 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 I love it. I love it. I love it. So let's talk about politics. Actually, this is let's have you shoot holes in this boundary that I'm gonna state. Okay.
Okay.
Because I find politics right now, especially, very triggering to talk about. And if I'm in the right mindset, I'm happy to talk about it. Thanksgiving it's just not the appropriate time. So what I would probably do is, and there's two things we can do. One, we can set them ahead of time and say, Barb, I love to have you for Thanksgiving. Everybody enjoys your company so much. I know you love to talk about politics. Other people, including me, not so much. So I'm going to ask you, if you come, to agree to not talk about politics. So that's one way you could do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So poke holes in that. Like, how would you change that boundary?
I thought that was very beautifully said. And,
okay.
Yeah. And some people, like my brother, was not capable of doing that. Like he could say, okay, I will, but then he wouldn't be able to do it because he just can't.
So let's play that out. Let's say, let's talk me and you. So let's say you come to Thanksgiving and you start talking about politics. I would pull you aside and I would say, Barb, we agreed ahead of time that totally want you to be here. Love that you're here celebrating. We agreed that you would not talk about politics. And I can hear you at talking about politics. So I'm going to ask you to stop.
Mm-hmm. So you said we agreed
Mm-hmm.
and didn't necessarily agree. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't.
Okay.
But I would say, I'm going to ask you to stop. And if you continue, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I really don't want to do that, but I am going to ask you to leave because I really want to have a good time. And the rest of my guests want to have a good time. And that doesn't include talking about politics.
Amazing. Drop the mic.
And you might even say, I hope you understand.
Okay. So what about if you don't have the opportunity to talk ahead of time? And I would strongly suggest, particularly around food pushers and around people who are going to drink to excess, and their drinking to excess is going to be uncomfortable for other people. I would recommend having the conversation ahead of time. So anything that you know is going to happen. I mean, what do you think? Do you think that's a must do? Do you think that's a nice to do? How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think it's a case by case situation because some people are going to lose their shit if they get told ahead of time, don't get drunk at my event or don't push food on people. I mean, I am a clean and sober person and I'm an abstinent person. So that means that I stick to my food program. And so that's my boundary that I need to set with other people as an individual. I don't hang around people that drink. And if I do, they drink like one or two drinks. They don't get drunk. And if I was at an event where people were getting drunk, I would leave because I would be uncomfortable. If I were hosting, I host sober events personally.
Yes. Okay. And I think that works for you. I don't know a lot of people that host sober events. Maybe I need to change my social circle. So what I heard you say was people are, they might not appreciate being told ahead of time, don't drink at my event. They're going to appreciate it a whole lot more than if they come and they start drinking and you say, you know what, I'm going to ask you to stop drinking. I think with something like that, I really think you almost need to have the conversation ahead of time because if they're not ready, then they're going to get very defensive and be like, well, why all of a sudden you could have?
Well, I think the thing is, if someone is an alcoholic, which those are the people that I'm used to dealing with, right? Because I ran with addicts my whole life. I drank abusively. I'm not an alcoholic, but I drank abusively for many years. I wasn't capable of stopping. So having a conversation doesn't matter, And so if it's going to be a volatile situation and they're going to lose it, I think, like I said, it's a case by case basis. Yes, I don't think there's a rule. And that's the thing about boundaries. There isn't a rule that is true in all circumstances for all people at all times. It's just not the case. So you have to decide, let's just like in my mind, I'm like, let's say it's dad that always gets drunk. If you know that you can have a conversation with him and he might actually be capable of not getting to the point where he's hammered, then go ahead and do it. But if he's going to lose his mind and be more of a jerk when he comes there because you requested ahead of time, did he not get drunk? Then maybe don't have the conversation, or maybe don't invite him. Like, you get to not invite. Yeah, I don't care if they're your family. I don't care if you've had the tradition for 70 years in your family. If you don't like it, if it makes you really uncomfortable and you're going to be triggered for weeks on end, you get to live your life the way that you want. Now, there are going to be repercussions, of course. You could have some backlash from people, and that's just the reality of the situation. And you just have to decide, like, what's it worth to me? What's at stake for me to not set the boundary? And what's at stake for me to set the boundary?
Yep. I'm so Podsters, as she's talking, I'm thinking I can apply this to my life. So I need to step out of how can I apply all this to my life and get back into podcast host mode. Yeah. Okay. So you had said, or when we were talking earlier, there were a few tips and tricks you had for how to say no. And that this is going to be incredibly valuable for everybody listening. Can you share a few of those nuggets with us about how to say no this time of year?
Yeah. The first one is to be quick about it. So I used to always wait until just the right time, and the right time never comes. Well, actually it does. The right time is always now. So if somebody, let's say you mentioned a food pusher, somebody pushes food on you, you say, no, thank you, immediately. And if they say, no, again, no, thank you, I appreciate it, no, thanks. And you just reinforce what you're saying. Maybe you didn't hear me. I said, no, thank you. But you do it immediately. You don't wait. You don't talk about them behind their back. You just say the thing right as soon as it happens. And what that does is, number one, it's respectful of the other person, letting them know immediately what's okay and what's not okay. And number two, you've said it, it's over with, it's done. And you're not like holding on to it and being anxious, waiting for the right moment. So, or like if somebody, here's another thing that happens to a lot of women, like somebody will comment on their body or their figure, and it's really uncomfortable. So as soon as they say it, you say, please don't make comments like that, or please don't talk about my body. Like, do it right in the minute. You might want to take the person aside, depends on the situation, but do it right then. Don't wait for the right moment to get them, like take them aside and say something. Like, it's not okay for you to talk like that.
Yeah. And what I like about the example that you just gave, so let's take the example of the food pusher. They're not going to change. And if you take them aside and say, hey, listen, I want to talk to you. When you push food, it makes me feel guilty. And I this and I that and I the other thing. A, it doesn't matter to them. And B, they're not going to change. So if you just simply say, no, thank you, or no, thanks, I'm not drinking today, or no, thanks, or just no, thank you. Like 3 words, no, thank you. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And then, and I would say, no, thank you again. And I would continue to say, no, thank you. Eventually they're just going to go away.
Right. Yeah.
Even if it's, well, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? You always eat my, pumpkin pie.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Not this year.
No, thanks. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
What else around holiday boundaries do you think is?
Oh, another one is be polite. And what I was telling Nancy before is I think a lot of people think they have to be a jerk when it comes to setting boundaries. And here's why I think that's the case. Because they wait and wait and wait until they're pushed way beyond their limits and they explode and it works. So they think, that's how it works. I have to be a jerk. I have to be rude. And the reality is you can be very polite. So the example that we just gave, no, thank you. And if you're quick, if you do that first tip, if you're quick, it's a lot easier to be polite because you haven't waited until you get past your limit. So you just say, no, thanks. No, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. Like, you don't have to be a jerk about it. It's like, what is the word I'm thinking of? You're just like saying the same thing over and over and over and over again. Eventually they will get it.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And another tip is to give an alternative. So let's say somebody says, hey, can you bring that amazing 70-step dish that you make that we love for the holidays, you can say, I'm not able to bring the 70-step dish, but I can bring a pie. So you're giving an alternative. You're naming what you can do. So, because like maybe you're like, I don't have time to cook, but I can pick up a pie. So I'm happy to do that. Right. So instead of saying like, I'm not able to bring that and having them go, well, what can you bring? Like instead of the back and forth, you preempt the back and forth by naming like what the alternative is. I call it naming the terms of the engagement.
Mm-hmm.
You could say, I could bring an apple pie or I can bring an appetizer. That's another way to name, like you give them options because when you give people either one option or two options, they're likely to choose those rather than step out of those examples and do something else. So you avoid the back and forth, which is a drain on energy, and you also live your life on your terms. So if you're tired of spending 17 hours on this 70-step dish that you have made every year for years, and you're just tired of doing it, you don't have to keep doing it, but you can do something else.
I love it. So a couple things there. And I want to role play this one because this is, I think people will get a lot of pushback, is the choices. So like when I'm helping Ava get ready for whatever, and I'll say, do you want to wear the pink shorts or the white shorts? Not what shorts do you want to wear?
Right.
5, it's going to take her all day. Do you want to wear pink or white? And then she'll choose. And then maybe she'll say, well, I want to wear the blue shorts. And okay, fine, great. But it's not. So can we role play the dessert?
Yeah. And before I say that, like the beautiful thing about what you just said was you give 2 choices, especially for children. This is really important, is you give them a sense of autonomy. I get to make choices.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that.
Now I'm forced to do something I don't want to do, but I get to make choices.
Yeah.
And you're doing it within boundaries of white or pink.
Perfect. Love it. Let's go back to the dessert. So, hey, Barb, I'm not going to be able to make my famous sweet potato pie this year. Nope. Sorry. Back up. So you tell me that you're not going to be able to make whatever it is. And I'm going to role play the person who doesn't like that.
Nancy, I'm not going to be bringing that famous casserole that you love this year. I can bring a pie or I can bring an appetizer. Which would you like?
Oh, Barb, you're kidding. Everybody loves that casserole. I count on that casserole. Yeah. This is going to mess up my whole meal. Why can't you bring it?
Well, I'm really not going to be spending the kind of time that I used to when it comes to cooking any longer. I hear you that you think it's going to ruin your Thanksgiving, but one dish is really not going to ruin a Thanksgiving. So which would you like me to bring? You want me to bring the pie or you want me to bring an appetizer?
Can we go back to this? Because this is really like people talk about this. This is legendary. People talk about this all year. You can't spare a couple hours? Like, I don't understand. Like, I'm doing everything. I'm doing the turkey. I'm doing all the other fixings. I'm going to be cooking all day. So I really don't think it's unreasonable because everybody loves it. You brought it for the past 25 years in a row.
Well, you're choosing to cook and do all that stuff, and you invited me over to be your guest, and I really appreciate doing that, you doing all that, but you don't have to do that. If you want to go out for dinner, I would be totally on board with that. Then you wouldn't have to do any of that work. But I'm not bringing the casserole. I can bring either a pie or an appetizer. Which one would you like me to bring?
Okay. Now, this is what I love about Barb setting boundaries. Maybe it's the experience. You are so calm when you set them, like clear and kind and calm. How do you remain so calm?
Because I know who I am.
So drill that down for the Podsters.
I'm solid in myself. I'm not wavering in who I am. My standards are my standards. And by the way, that's my definition of a boundary, is a standard you have for your life.
I love it.
When they think of boundaries, they think about the part where you're communicating them to other people. Communicating your boundaries to other people is like 5% of boundaries. Because many boundaries are really for you and about you, and other people don't have to know about them. You enact them. You don't necessarily speak them.
It's interesting because I have said before, and I will say it again, I'm sure, I'm comfortable with my decisions. And as you were talking, I was thinking the same thing. When I find myself not getting torqued up, it's because I'm comfortable with that decision. So I'm comfortable with who I am. You can get as upset as you are. It's not going to get me upset because I'm confident and I'm comfortable in my decision. So that's pretty powerful. I love it.
And so if we back up a little bit about like what one thing, like this actually happened to me many years before I had healthy boundaries. So I used to spend hours and hours and hours and hours making all kinds of Christmas cookies, and I would go around and deliver them to people who had way too many Christmas cookies and they didn't really. And it was exhausting to me. It was expensive for me. It was tiring. It was laborious. And I just made the decision, like, that is not how I want to spend my holidays. And so I was really solid in how I do want to spend the holidays. And so for me to stop doing that. So when we were just doing this little role play, I envisioned, like, how do I want to spend my holidays? Well, it's not slaving over the kitchen for 17 hours on a dish that's going to be gone in 3 minutes.
Right.
And because I'm in recovery from compulsive overeating, my focus on food is still much less than it ever was all of my adult life. So it's really easy for me. And I don't notice how I didn't go into a whole explanation, because you asked me why and I didn't address why.
I know.
Because it's none of your business.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Right?
I love it.
I could choose to tell you if I want to. I chose not to. Other people might choose to say, I've really decided to pay attention to my energy and where I'm spending it on the holidays, and where I want to spend it is not slaving away in the kitchen.
I love it. I love it. I think it's clear. It is kind. It is how you take back your life. This is how you take control of how you live your life. And particularly during the next 8 weeks that are coming up, where we have competing demands on our time, our energy, our choices. This is where you get to decide. You get to decide. And that's a wonderful, beautiful, powerful thing. Any last thoughts or comments?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that I always end, I'm a guest on podcasts with, is keep the focus on yourself. So many people with poor boundaries are so focused on other people, what they're doing, what they're thinking, maybe what they're thinking about you. And you're the only one that you can control. When you're focused out there, it's an endless drain on your energy. But when you're focused in here, you can actually fill your cup so that it's overflowing. So you pour from the saucer rather than trying to pour from an empty cup. Well, you can't do that if you're not focused on yourself, if you're not taking care of yourself and meeting your own needs. And when you meet your own needs, then you don't have expectations of other people. So a lot of people with poor boundaries are seeking approval from others. And it's okay to seek other people's approval, but only when you have your own approval first. So do what you love in your life, and you will approve of yourself, and you won't need other people's approval, and it'll be a lot easier to set boundaries.
I love it. It's okay to seek other people's approval as long as you approve of how you're living your life. I love it. I mean, I think that's a great way to peace out and peace out. So reminder, Podsters, we have 2 sessions coming up November 15th. They're an hour each. You give us an hour and we will help you take back your holiday.
Yeah.
Thanks, Barb.
All right. Thanks, Nancy.
That's a wrap, Podsters. And before we go, I ask you, what's one thing from today's episode that you will use this week to unmute yourself? DM me, email me, send a smoke signal, whatever you need to do. Let me know what you're going to do differently. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone you know and leave a 5-star review on Apple. This helps me spread our message of empowerment to more people worldwide. Let's do this.